Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. To Henry. Quick snap. Breeze. Pass is incomplete. No flag for Tommy Lee Lewis.
Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Skipper going free to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on the New England.
The Browns can feel the pressure under more scrutiny. And what do? Act more stupidly. That is Rob Gronkowski going to go down as the greatest tight end to ever play the game. And we're going to take a look at some of the best players with the best value. 3 guys, arguably the best of their position for the cheapest cost. What teams are winning this offseason and this next season when it comes to the finances? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Ross Allen, and this is Fourth and Long. This is this week's NFL breakdown. The offseason is... It feels like we're at the point of the offseason where there's not really a whole lot going on. We're kind of waiting for training camp to start. The draft is long gone. A lot of the early free agency stuff long gone. A lot of the outcomes and I guess the consequences of maybe the instant consequences of the draft are over. So we're just, as NFL fans, we're just calling for any sort of news. But luckily, we have the Browns to give us a new headline seemingly every single day, because this is a poverty franchise. But of course, before we get into the whole new Browns, I guess, escalation of their dilemma, of course, want a quick shout out. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Fourth and Long Media. Find all of our stuff there, or our website over at thefourthandlong.com. Recently, with some of the NFL shows that I've been putting out, I've been taking a look at conquering some of these pretty challenging NFL quizzes. We've taken a look at tier rankings as well. So go ahead, go check those out. You can find those at thefourthandlong.com/NFL. But like I said, in today's show, this is another time where I get to rant about my displeasure about the Cleveland Browns, because if you think it can't get any worse, it already has, and probably about twice as worse too in that time span. Because what's going on right now is that Deshaun Watson is going to be meeting with the NFL a little bit later this week. I think it's on Thursday, and the league is reportedly seeking an indefinite suspension that will last at least 1 season. And the Browns, you know, in their amazing genius, what the Browns are doing is, instead of trying to mend a relationship with a quarterback of starting caliber that they have on the roster, that they're already paying for, Baker Mayfield, they don't try to fix things with him. They still hate him. So instead this year, what's more than likely the case, after Deshaun Watson is likely given at least a 1-year suspension, their newly signed quarterback that they're paying $230 million of guaranteed money to is not going to be playing, and instead, it's more than likely going to be Jacoby Brissett. Now, I don't want to throw any slander against Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a quality backup. When he was on the Patriots, he was fine. When he was on the Colts, he was fine. I don't really have anything bad to say about Jacoby Brissett here, but why? Why are the Browns doing this? I know. I think the bottom line here is, I've talked a lot about the Browns this offseason with how they're totally disrespecting Baker Mayfield. He does not deserve this. He does not deserve the slander that he's receiving. This isn't. They're even trying to cover his character now too, with reports saying that the teams around the league don't like his locker room presence. He's not a leader. I beg to differ. From everything, obviously I'm not in their locker room, but everything I've seen, Baker Mayfield just seems like a fired up quarterback that wants to win football games. He's always going in with his teammates. I've never seen anything bad about him. I haven't really seen much bad said about his character until we got to the point where the Browns don't. I think the Browns almost have a war with him. I mean, there's multiple times this season where we have Baker Mayfield, who's throwing with a torn throwing shoulder. All right, not the easy thing to do. He had a torn labrum. I know how horrible those things are. I had surgery on one already. Both of them are still torn. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's horrible to deal with. But he was still going out there and busting his ass for that team. There was not a time in the season where he gave up. And there was one game where they, you have one of the best running back duos in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And shout out to Chunt. But they barely played Nick Chubb, and they made Baker Mayfield throw from over 60 times, I think it was, in that game. Kevin Stefanski has to have something on against Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has to have like something on Kevin Stefanski to cause this hate. I don't understand this whole situation. I can't wait. Maybe it'll take 5 years. Maybe it'll take 10 years. Maybe it'll take 15 years. But I think eventually we're going to figure out why this whole situation is as bad as it is. And I am super excited to hear that news because I have no idea what is going on here. But the thing is, the Browns, they're starting Jacoby Brissett instead of Baker Mayfield. First off, it's stupid. And another point I was getting to is I just want to know what they're going to do with Baker Mayfield here. Are they just going to let him run out of his contract, sit on the bench in Cleveland? Or are they going to trade him? Reports are saying that the Seahawks are still highly interested in trading for Baker Mayfield, which makes sense because when you have Geno Smith and Drew Lock as your two best quarterbacks on your roster, obviously you're going to be looking to make an upgrade at that position there. And then I think the Panthers are still kind of in the conversation, but I would be shocked personally if Baker Mayfield went there. I don't see that route happening. I think they're sticking with Sam Darnold, at least for the time being. That's what Matt Rule mistakenly said to the media. So we're going to see how that goes. It's just infuriating. I'm not even that big of a Baker Mayfield fan. I wasn't even really that big of a Baker Mayfield fan ever. But this whole Brown situation is making me love the guy and feel horrible for him because this is asinine. This is stupid. They're ruining his chance of making the money he arguably deserves. Now, I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield is the answer. He's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, which he absolutely isn't. But what he is a starting caliber quarterback. And what he is a top 20 quarterback in the league as well. He clearly deserves a second chance. He was doing fine as quarterback as well. Obviously, he wasn't that good. He wasn't great last year. But that's also what happens when, like I said, you have a torn throwing shoulder. That's not great. It's not going to help your chances. It's not going to help your playing ability. So I just think that the Browns need to hurry up and come to a conclusion here. And then, I mean, what might help accelerate their decisions that the NFL can figure out what they want to do with Deshaun Watson when it comes to if he's going to play, if he's not going to play, how long he's not going to play for. Because there's a lot of loose ends that need to be wrapped up right now. And that is going to really allow us to move forward with this situation. And I just hope that whatever direction we go, that Baker Mayfield gets the chance, or I guess the second shot now, that quite frankly he deserves. But in other news, I guess before we get there, let me know your thoughts on Baker Mayfield. Do you guys agree with me? Is Baker Mayfield still able to be that guy, or are the Browns being super unfair to him? What do you think is going on as well in the background? Is there legit like beef between him and Kevin Stefanski? Is there like a insider I guess dilemma process there that the Browns are legitimately putting effort into tanking Baker Mayfield in his career and his trade value? Because I think the signs are there. But next thing I want to get into here, of course, within the last week, at least one of the greatest tight ends of all time, if not the greatest tight end of all time, has officially retired. I know he's retired before, so once again, I'll put in quotes, retire. I will not call Gronk officially retired until he is enshrined into the NFL Hall of Fame in at least 5 years. So I don't believe it. Same thing with Tom Brady. Totally called Tom Brady not actually being retired with his last announcement. He's back. Won't be surprised if Gronk comes back too. If it's the beginning of the season, if it's the middle of the season, if he comes in for when after the Bucks make the playoffs and he wants to go get another Super Bowl or help the Bucks make a playoff push, would not surprise me in the least. But as of right now, he is retired and he will go down as I would say he's going to be known as the most dominant and the scariest tight end. Arguably, he's not even just tight end, he's going to be one of the most dominant and scary wide receivers of all time. Anyone get their hands on the ball, he was lethal. I think we should all remember the time in early 2000s where you couldn't stop Rob Gronkowski. Did I say 2010s? Yes, I'm pretty sure I did. But Rob Gronkowski was insane. He was this physical specimen where he was too strong, too fast, too good of a route runner for anyone to really have a good matchup against him when it came to pairing up their defense to who is going to cover Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski was always a guy that had to at least be double covered because a linebacker not fast enough to cover him, safety not strong enough to bring him down. You had to have at least a linebacker and a safety on him. Cornerbacks, no shot because he could keep up with it because it's hard for the best of the cornerbacks to keep up with him, and they're not bringing him down. It was almost like a Marshawn Lynch type guy where you almost never saw him get tackled by just one person. It was always going to be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Rob Gronkowski was a nightmare, especially because my Denver Broncos used to play against the Patriots a lot in the playoffs, at least in the Peyton Manning era. Best era, at least my favorite. And it was always horrifying to play against Rob Gronkowski, especially when Tom Brady was the one getting him the football. It wasn't fair almost all the time, but let's take a look at the numbers, see if the numbers can tell us anything when it comes to his status as GOAT. So of course he goes down 5th all time in yards by tight ends, but he's almost 6,000 yards behind Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez is a little over 15,000. Rob Gronkowski is a little bit over 9,000. But the thing is, Rob Gronkowski averaged 15 yards per catch throughout his career, while Tony only averaged 11.4. And Rob Gronkowski is also 3rd all-time in touchdowns with 93. The tight end TD leader of all time is Antonio Gates, one guy who is severely underrated in my humble opinion. But the thing with this, Rob Gronkowski played 93 less games than Antonio Gates and only finished 24 touchdowns behind him. Gronk averaged 3.9 points per game throughout his career, and Antonio Gates only averaged 3. So Gronk almost a point more ahead of Antonio Gates in points per game. Tony Gonzalez had 18 more touchdowns than Rob Gronkowski. He goes down as 2nd of all time, but even lower on the spectrum as well, because Tony Gonzalez only averaged 2.5 points per game. So these are 2 of the biggest statistical numbers that you could really look for when it comes to dominance by tight end. Not even 2, but I guess we'll throw 4 in there. Obviously, the 2 main categories is going to be yards and touchdowns. That's how we measure basically every position that can get yards and touchdowns. And so this whole debate is, I don't think there will ever clearly be an answer here when it comes to the GOAT status of Gronk, just because it's almost like, I'm not saying it is like, but it's almost like trying to compare LeBron James to Michael Jordan. Gronkowski, fairly different era than Tony Gonzalez. And even Antonio Gates was a little bit closer to Gronk's era when it comes to total timeline, but still a different style of offense during that game as well. Rob Gronkowski, in my opinion, I would say that out of all the tight ends I've been able to watch throughout their careers, that Rob Gronkowski is the scariest tight end that I've ever seen. He's the most dominant one I've ever seen. And I'd argue, man, just imagine if he didn't have those injury issues with his knees and his elbows. Just imagine if he wasn't hindered by that, if he wasn't, slowed down by that. he would clearly be the greatest tight end of all time. And I would say right now that Rob Gronkowski is the greatest tight end of all time. And at the least, he's the most dominant tight end of all time. But of course, like I said, this is going to be a big opinion piece. When the numbers are this close and different eras, it's really going to come down to personal opinion on whether or not Rob Gronkowski is the greatest tight end of all time. I would say top three, it's him, it's Tony Gonzalez, and it's Antonio Gates. Really, it's Rob or Tony Gonzalez at this point. Of course, Travis Kelce is probably going to be in that conversation by the time his career is over. By probably, I mean, he's very, very likely to be in this conversation by the time his career is over. But as of right now, as retiring, might just be recency bias, but to me, Rob Gronkowski is the greatest tight end to ever play in the NFL here. But of course, I need your thoughts. I need your thoughts on this one. Is Rob Gronkowski the greatest tight end of all time? Let us know in the comments on this video. Let us know in the replies over on Twitter, comments on Instagram. Just let us know. Like I said, at Fourth Lawn Media. If you haven't yet, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Rumble, anywhere you find podcasts from, because we are there whether you want us to be or not. But the last thing I'm going to get into today is just taking a look at some of the numbers. I put together a bit of a list, and I guess this is still a bit of opinion, but it's a lot. The margin for between opinion and fact is a lot smaller with this one than, I don't know, say, is Rob Gronkowski the greatest tight end of all time. But what I have found here is 3 players who I will argue are the best at their position with the cheapest contract for them. We're going to take a look, starting us off at the quarterback position. I am going to say that Justin Herbert is the best quarterback given, and also has the cheapest contract. His average annual earnings, because shout out to rookie contracts for the teams like the Chargers, he is only making $6.4 million per year, and in 2022 he will be looking to make a $7.2 million payday. And now really between this, it's really between Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow when it comes to the title of best quarterback at the cheapest contract. Now it really picking between Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow is it's kind of like splitting hairs. They're 2 very, very good quarterbacks. Why Joe Burrow may very well have the advantage when it comes to this argument is that he has been to the Super Bowl, and Justin Herbert still hasn't won a playoff game yet. Poor Chargers fans. But I guess the thing here is it's just opinion, and it's a prediction of the future. I think that Justin Herbert is going to be the better quarterback long term over Joe Burrow. I just like Justin Herbert's arm talent a little bit more. But man, it's super, super close there. It's pretty hard to choose between those two. An easier choice to make, though, was when it came to the best pass rusher on the cheapest contract. For me, this one really came down to Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa. I ended up going Nick Bosa because I feel like he's more of just he's more of a primary pass rusher. That's just one tool in Micah Parsons' arsenal. But I would go with Nick Bosa on this one. His average annual earnings are only $3.9 million per year, and he has a contract cost in 2022 of $5 million. Of course, he has that contract extension, the 1-year extension that he can go on with his rookie deal. And once with all the guys I listed here, once they're off their rookie deal, they're going to be making a crap ton of money, and rightfully so. So it's likely that the teams are able to get all this talent at them on this cheap of a contract. This is one of the keys to being good at drafting, because if you could draft a guy that's going to be an instant impact player, you already have 4 to 5 years of them at very little value towards the salary cap. So, man, I guess the Chargers did a good job of drafting this guy. The Niners did a good job of drafting, and this next team also did a good job of drafting here. Nick Bosa, I think he's going to really should have been comeback player of the year last year. And he's probably going to get 15 sacks at least this season. I really love that 49ers front seven, and Nick Bosa is clearly one of the best pass rushers in the game. I think the most, clearly the most expensive pass rusher is TJ Watt, but that's also a guy that really deserves that money. Nick Bosa is going to be making pretty close to what TJ Watt is, if I had to take a guess at what his value is going to be there. But the last guy that I wanted to shout out here is a real, just a gold mine that the Minnesota Vikings found. Because I'm going with Justin Jefferson. These are my top 3 players. The top 3 best players in the league with the cheapest contracts. Rounding us out is going to be Justin Jefferson. His average annual earnings are $3.3 million per year. In 2022, he is set to make $4.2 million. And Justin Jefferson, that trade for him will go down is one of the most even trades of all time, because the Vikings trade away Stephon Diggs to the Bills, and in return they get that draft capital and they take Justin Jefferson with that. Now Stephon Diggs has become a clear wide receiver 1 in Buffalo. He's really excelled and accelerated even Josh Allen's progression as a quarterback. Look how good Josh Allen is. He would not be here if Stephon Diggs was not on that team. But also, the Vikings were able to trade away top talent and able to get top talent back. Justin Jefferson had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, rookie season of all time when it comes to wide receivers, only up there with Hall of Famer, one of the greatest of all time, Randy Moss. So that really goes to say something about him. And it's still a lethal duo having him and Adam Thielen on opposite sides of the football. That's insane. So to be able to have this kind of talent in Justin Jefferson, clearly one of the best wide receivers in the NFC and the NFL as a whole, you really can't beat this value. But can you guys get a list that beats mine? Can you get a list that beats the talent per price of them? At least maybe going into their 2022 costs, or even their average costs as well. We'll love to see if you could beat this list. This is my top 3, like I said: Justin Herbert, Nick Bosa, and Justin Jefferson. Beat me in the comments if you can. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. This is going to be another edition of our NFL offseason breakdown. Of course, I've been your host, Ross Allen, and thank you so much. If you've subscribed to us on YouTube, we're almost at 1,100, which is a crazy mark to be at. Thank you for followed us on Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or if you also follow us over on the social medias on Twitter and Instagram at Fourth and Long Media. Of course, you find all this great content over at thefourthandlong.com, and for specifically thefourthandlong.com/NFL. We get weekly NFL videos out for you guys, along with MMA and Australian football content. We are the only show in the world that covers those 3 sports, and I will say that until I am proven wrong. But thank you guys so much for listening. Go out, have a blessed day, and we'll see you in the next one.